Recently, Dave Ramsey, who I do respect quite a bit, said this.
$1 million should create for you an $80,000 income, boys and girls. So you should perpetually, like if forever, you should be able to pull 80,000 forever.
Now, that sounds good in theory. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work out and the math doesn't add up. So what I want to do in this video is explain to you as simply as possible why that's the case, and more importantly, answer the question of how much you should actually be withdrawing from a retirement portfolio on a yearly basis. So let's do just that. As always, my name is Derek and I got my degree in finance, so you don't have to. In Dave's example, he says that you should be able to find a good fund that will return 12% per year, and after taking into account inflation as well as portfolio growth, you should be left with 8%, which you can withdraw to live on. In his example, he gives $1 million portfolio and an $80,000 a year income. The reason why this doesn't work is for a thing known as sequence of risk or sequence of return risk. Basically, this describes that the closer that your withdrawal rate is to the average, the more likely your portfolio is to run out of money in a given period. We'll use 30 years because that's a good retirement period. The other thing that we have to take into account is that the stock market does not generate 12% per year. And even if it did, it's not going to generate 12% per year every single year. In fact, there are years where the stock market has negative returns. And the closer that your withdrawal rate is to the average, in this case 12%, the more that you're going to have to play catch up during those down years. And multiple down years stacked on top of each other will severely impact a portfolio's ability to generate a return for you, especially when you are withdrawing so close to the average. So when you run simulations, and there are tests and there are research done on this, the 8% withdrawal rate on a 12% average gives you basically a failure rate of close to 50% over a 30-year period, which means that if it were your portfolio and you withdrew 8% every single year, you had a 50% or very close to 50% chance of running out of money before the retirement period ended. So that begs the question, what is the true or the proper withdrawal rate for a portfolio? We have to do a couple things in order to do that. One, to be able to give you the exact precise answer, we'd have to be able to look into the future. We can't do that. So what we can do instead is use safe withdrawal rates based on data. Now, in the past, there's been this thing known as the 4% rule, right? Which basically states that over 30 years, if you withdraw 4% of your portfolio, that will leave enough return to basically cover inflation and a little bit of growth, which also means that you can year after year adjust that portfolio for inflation. So 4% the first year and then adjust for inflation accordingly. Nowadays, because inflation is so high and because the risk of assets really has gone up, mostly because of questionable monetary policy, as well as just overall risk in the markets, it is more so probably closer to 3%. Now, you will have some experts that say it's under 3%, and you'll have some experts that say it's over 3%. I've seen 2.6, 2.7%. I've also seen 3.5%, 3.3%. 3% right on the money is probably a safe bet that gives you a very low likelihood of failure on your portfolio. That means that over 30 years, you will most likely not run out of money. So remember, this is assuming the average risk for the average market, which in this instance is obviously the US stock market. A couple other things that we have to understand is one, in Dave's example, he used a mutual fund. In reality, most people are not using mutual funds. They're using ETFs or just market tracking funds. In my opinion, it doesn't really matter because no matter the fund, it's very rare for a fund to outperform the market average for a long term. So really, we should be just using the market average. On top of that, we also have to understand that the market average doesn't necessarily return 12%. It's a couple percentage points lower than that on average. So even then, if you adjust everything lower by, let's say, 2%, you're left with a 6% withdrawal rate in his example, and that is still too high. So if you want an $80,000 a year passive income in your retirement, you don't need $1 million. You really need more like $2 to $2.5 million. Unfortunately, those are just the facts. Like I said, I respect Dave Ramsey quite a bit. I think he's done some tremendous things with his life, but that doesn't mean that everything he says or everything that I say is just the truth. So you, as an avid and as a smart investor, should always do your own due diligence, should always back check things against data, because the one thing that is certain, or at least as close to certain as possible, is data. So we always must use data when we're making our decisions. Now in this video, or in these videos, I try to leave the math portion out as much as possible because math can get very complicated very quickly, but the data and the math does exist and you can look up those things yourself, and I do encourage you to do so. If you want to dive deep into the rabbit hole, you can also look up sequential risk of return and other things that relate to basically portfolio creation and portfolio management over a long term. But if you want simple economics and simple personal finance broken down in easy terms, then you are in the right place. And I hope to see you in the next video. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. This is a relatively new YouTube channel and it's something that I'm very passionate about and I want to share with you guys for a long time. And don't forget to turn on the bell notification. New videos come out usually on Tuesdays, but sometimes I'll do a video on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday if something important needs to be talked about. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.